Well, in light of all the Biden troubles, they dispatched Debbie Dingell to MSNBC to run some ground game interference. Let's watch.
Joining me now is Michigan Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman Dingell, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Kristen, it's good to be with you.
Well, it's always great to have you. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to what's in the special counsel's report. I'm going to read you a little bit of it. He writes in part, quote, "In his interview with our office, Mr. Biden's memory was worse. He did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, and forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began." You have obviously interacted with President Biden on a regular basis. What do you think of that characterization? How do you respond?
Look, last night I was stunned, and the more I've read more today, I'm just angry at this point. I think that I'll use the vice president's word. These are gratuitous, cheap shots that are not true. I can, from my own personal experience of 1 week ago today, or yesterday, I spent more than 8 hours with the president. And I'm going to tell you a very personal story, which I would never have shared, except that we seem to think there's nothing that's off limit anymore. But the death of John's anniversary was Wednesday, which is February 7th. And I made a mistake. I know the date, but sometimes you make a mistake.
Yeah.
And Bo's birthday is the 3rd. And President Biden never forgets John's anniversary and knows how hard and tough it is for me and ties it together. And he on that plane last Thursday knew I was going to have a tough week and checked on me and wanted to make sure I was okay. And then we had lots of other conversations about issues that I get two of the worst issues that we talk about, autos and Arab Americans, and we had direct, blunt conversations. We talked about the politics of Michigan. He was on his game. He knew what he was talking about. He listened, and I've seen results of the discussions we've had last Thursday. So I take great offense from my own personal experience at the words that are used in that report.
So, of course, you could see she's getting all in her emotional state. She's offended. These comments that were made by the special counsel were unnecessary. They weren't well-meaning. She takes offense to it. She spent all this time. It's so ridiculous. It really is. Why would he need to make this stuff up in the report? It doesn't serve him any well to do that, unless, of course, he was sent there to interview the president to get some measure of his cognitive abilities to see whether or not they should prosecute him with this whole documents that he's holding in his house next to his Corvette in a ripped box, in which they say, well, we can't prosecute him because he's a well-meaning elderly old man that, forgets from time to time because his memory's not so good. So what is she saying? He's great. He's sharp. He remembers things and dates. All right, well then, to the contrary, what you're saying is that he is fit to stand trial about why he has these documents, these ill-gotten documents. He was a senator, he was a vice president, and he wasn't supposed to be having these classified documents. If that's the case, that means that he's fit to stand trial. So she's getting all crazy and bent out of shape, but she should be saying, well, it has been my personal experience that he's sharp, he is knowledgeable, he remembers dates and times and places and people. That I don't know what Robert Herr's experience was, but that has not been my experience. And she could have said it very rationally, very reasonably, with firm logic, and saying, this is my own personal experience. Well, if your personal experience is the case, Ms. Dingell, that was Mr. Herr's personal experience. Let's get back to it.
Well, we appreciate your sharing such a personal and obviously emotional story. So thank you for that perspective. I do want to get your broader thoughts, though, on the fact that if you look at the polling, 76% of Americans, based on our latest NBC News poll, say that they do have concerns about the president's mental and physical health. 62% said those concerns were major concerns. Is the mere appearance of the fact that there might be something to be worried about a political liability?
Look, I think that's why you're seeing the White House take this so seriously. Now, you've got two men that are clearly going to be the candidates for president. The other person's age is not much younger than Donald Trump. And than Joe Biden. See, we all keep making mistakes. And I would say, why aren't we talking about the 91 felon indictments that he has against him?
Sounds to me like Robert Hur should be sitting her down to figure out whether or not she's incompetent, for crying out loud. Do you see the quick projection and pivot? Oh, let's get back to talking about Trump and the 91 indictments that he has. And disregard all this other stuff. These are the American people that have these general concerns about whether or not he's fit and competent to go another 4-5 years of the presidency. Not a doctor. The American people think this, Dingle.
Indictments that he has against him. I'm of the school, let Joe Biden be Joe Biden. When people see who he is, how on game he is, I think this is going to be a hard year. I think this is going to be something that we're going to be talking about. The publicity around this is just one more issue that's got to be dealt with. You know me, I don't mince the facts. But I think these are the two candidates that we're going to be talking about. And Joe Biden has to go out and show people exactly who he is and all the good things he has done and why he is the right man for this job versus Donald Trump.
Mince the facts. She's not even stating the facts. And as far as Joe Biden showing who he is, yeah, that's what people are concerned about. Who he's showing he is.
Let me follow up with you on that point, because I have spoken to some Democratic strategists today who say kind of what you just said, that President Biden's the only person who can fix this. He's the only person who can address this. And there needs to be a shift in strategy. He needs to be more out front so that voters can see, these strategists said to me, that he does have the mental acuity to serve another 4 years. What do you think that strategy should look like? Does it include more interviews with the press? Does it include more campaign events? What specifically would your guidance be?
Well, I've got to think about this. I'm not sure more press interviews with gotcha questions is the answer, to be perfectly frank.
I'm sorry. I got to stop her. They don't want him out there. They don't want him being faced with gotcha questions because he's not fast enough to come up with the answers to these off-the-cuff questions or things that may come up. This is where you got to give Trump a lot of credit. He's took incoming, could speak extemporaneously. He used to come out of the White House before he would go to Marine One. He would just answer a barrage of unscheduled, unknown questions from everyone. He'd take all that incoming fire and give back poignant answers. You may not like them. Maybe a little bit of salesmanship, a little bit of P.T. Barnum. That's what he is also. There's a bit of that, a little bit of showmanship. Got it. But, of course, he could go out and he could mix it up with anybody. And that's the big concern with Biden. He's just not his age, his fitness. He's just a step too slow now. He just doesn't have it anymore like he used to. That's why they don't want him out there running around being faced with these gotcha questions. He's just not quick enough on the draw to miss the bullet.
But when I saw Joe Biden walked in to that, I didn't even know what his schedule was going to be last Thursday. I knew we were going into a UAW hall. But when we went into that bar and grill, and there were people that didn't even know he was coming, some had been invited, and you watched him interact with everybody, he was in his element. He's the Joe Biden I have known for 40 years, and they trust him, and they like him, and they love him. Put him with real people. Let Joe Biden be real. Get him a little less in the bubble that people want to put him in. People will easily want to reelect him as president.
Not so fast there, Dingleberry. America, they easily want to elect Joe Biden again. I would say that there are polls that would suggest the contradiction of such a statement. If we pull up the Bloomberg here, and this was November of 24 election, if it was tomorrow, U.S. president were being held at that time. And this was going back to December from Bloomberg, who was certainly not a Trump fan. Donald Trump were on the ballot. You can see that in the swing states, 47% of folks to, 42 for Biden? That's huge. There are other states that are really in play that really determine the presidency. Arizona, he's got some room on Biden. Can you pull that up just a little bit more for me so I can see those numbers? Bring it up a little. Yeah, okay, I can see that. Okay, so Georgia, 49% to 43. Michigan, who usually goes into the blue column, 46 to 42 in Trump's direction. Nevada, pretty close, 47, 44. North Carolina, he's got a sizable lead, 49 to 40. Pennsylvania, who he won last time, but he's starting to pull away, 46, 44. And in Wisconsin, he's got a 45, 41 advance. That's from Bloomberg. Let's go to the other one, if you don't mind. Bring up the other one. The Times Siena poll. There it is. This was in November of 23, so a year out. So Nevada, now the numbers are getting even wider. So I don't even know what Dingle is saying, that people want to either overwhelmingly or they're enthusiastically reelect Biden. Trump's up 10 in Nevada as of November. It's getting bigger now. In Georgia, he's up by 6. Arizona, he's up by 5. Michigan, he's up by 5. He's just continuing to gain ground. He's starting to get some steam. Pennsylvania's up 4. All right, so Wisconsin's still in the Biden category, but a lot of these swing states that tend to be, they could go one way or the other in the election. You don't have people enthusiastically running to the polls and that are so excited to vote for Biden. And for the most part, they're voting against Trump. They don't like him. But with everything going on now and the thought that it could be a President Kamala, boy, I'll tell you, there's even some Democrats that have to go to the poll and say, I'm not going to tell my friends, but I'm going to pull the trigger for Trump because I can't deal with this cackling idiot for the next 4 years.
Let me tell you what a Democratic House member told my colleague, Peter Nicholas, quote, "It is a nightmare," referring to these developments. "It weakens President Biden electorally, and Donald Trump would be a disaster and an authoritarian for Democrats. We are in a grim situation." What do you say to some Democrats who argue it may be time to consider a plan B, even though realistically there's not really time for that?
There isn't a plan B. So all of us are in. We have got to get ourselves together and fight for our future, because a future with Donald Trump as president again should scare all of us, and what the consequences could be. And we've got to go out and tell, all of us have worked with this man. We know how good he is. We know what he's delivered on. You know what I'm tired of? I am tired of Democrats and Republicans. Republicans are worse, who voted for the bipartisan bill, voted for the IRA bill, and then don't give Joe Biden any credit for his leadership. I've sat through presentations in my own state where they take credit for all these things, and Joe Biden's name is never mentioned, and yet every one of those was a federal dollar that came because of his leadership. And these Republicans that actually have the nerve to go out there to roads and bridges, or to even go into a senior's home. A Republican did this in Michigan and talked about how the price of their insulin was down to $35 now. They didn't vote for it. We got to remind people how people vote, what they do, what they don't do, and what our vision and what's been delivered on. I'm tired of words. We got to stop talking words. We got to show people what's been delivered on, what the actions are.
And you could see Kristen Welker, just the puppet, the strings are going, she nodding along with Dingle here. Again, with all of this, fiery rhetoric, Republicans are worse. So there you go, just dropping everybody into the same bucket. They're all worse. Yeah, they're bad people. Okay, well, there is no plan B. You're stuck with Joe Biden unless you remove him at the convention in August. And if you do remove him, then you're tacitly saying he's not competent, he's not fit, he's not able to continue at this pace for another 4 or 5 years. And then you're disregarding everything that was being said all the way back and everything that we see with our own 2 eyes about it, him stumbling and fumbling and tripping and falling and fighting with people and misremembering names of leaders in Egypt and Mexico and talking to dead people. It's just obnoxious and really unbelievable. But you got to give Dingle credit. She's going to go down with the ship. She's going to continue to keep perpetuating the lies and the rhetoric and the nonsense. and the tropes, saying we can't deal with 4 more years of Donald Trump because the last 3 have just been so wonderful. My goodness, we can't go back to that, peace accords in the Middle East and these record high numbers in the stock market and the low inflation and the energy independence. We can't go back to that. My goodness, we need to keep people relying upon the government, because just remember, the scariest words you could hear is, "Hi, we're here from the government. We're here to help." Boy, let's get another 3, 4 more years of that.